Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election, and I'll be talking about what I think could be the most insane, chaotic, unexpected, crazy scenario. A 269 to 269 electoral college tie. So, we're going to talk about that scenario today, what it would look like, and most importantly, what would happen if we had a tie, who would win. And the answer, I'll tell you at the end, it's actually surprisingly straightforward. So let's go and fill out this map. Now, obviously, a 269-269 tie is not the most likely outcome. It is, however, possible, and it's, decently possible too. It isn't like I'm just, throwing in a bunch of random states and saying these votes add up to 269 on each side. No, this is a map that could very well happen. So we're going to talk about it. Now, there obviously are going to be states that we know are going to vote a certain way, and I'm just going to characterize these states right away. These states, I would say, are almost certain to vote for either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. But what you're going to see here is that Kamala Harris is going to start at 225, and Donald Trump is going to start a bit below her, but not by much. So we're going to give him Maine 2nd District just to save some time here, as well as Texas. Even though these states and districts could be closer, we're just going to leave them as such. So once again, we're kind of down to the big seven. But you will notice that I've added Nebraska 2nd District, which I usually characterize as a Democratic district. Now, in 2020, this district did vote for Joe Biden by around 6%, so it's likely Kamala Harris wins it. But it wouldn't be crazy to imagine Trump winning it, especially if we see turnout decline across the board for Democrats, maybe on a better night for Trump than expected in the suburbs. He could win this district back. Again, not my actual prediction, but for now, we're not going to touch it. Now, let's say Kamala Harris pulls off some victories in the Rust Belt. Let's say she wins Michigan, Wisconsin. So that gets her to 250 electoral votes. But let's say Trump holds on in the Sun Belt. Let's say that he wins in Arizona, he wins in Georgia, and he wins in North Carolina. He's at 262 electoral votes. Now, before we talk about the remaining district in the states of Nevada and Pennsylvania, this map isn't crazy, right? Like Wisconsin and Michigan, I think we could all see going for Kamala Harris. Again, Wisconsin voted for Biden by around half a point. Michigan voted for him by around 3%. So these are definitely states that have gone blue in the past, and Kamala Harris could definitely win. But then Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona, obviously North Carolina voted for Trump in 2020, so it's fair to say that Trump has a good chance there. Georgia, he lost it by 0.3% in 2020, but he's up in the polls there, so certainly he could win this state. And again, Republicans, a lot of Republicans expect him to win here. And again, Donald Trump is focusing on this state. Donald Trump knows he'll have a very difficult time winning the election if he doesn't carry Georgia. So he will, make no mistake, he will be going to Georgia as much as he goes to any state, potentially just as much as Pennsylvania. Georgia and Pennsylvania could be the two most important states this election. So Donald Trump's going to make a huge play for the state. And if he wins it, he still has a very good chance of being the next president. Now, the final state's Arizona. Arizona, I think, is the hardest of these states for Trump. In terms of margin, it's not that different from Georgia. It's only like 0.1% bluer, or it was only 0.1% bluer in 2020. We have to remember trends. And in the past 4 years, Democrats in Arizona have seen success all across the board. And Georgia, they've won 3 very important Senate races, but down ballot, the state still remains pretty Republican. So another thing you have to consider is that in the polls in Arizona, Trump does about a 1.5 worse there. And again, in both these states, the polls do tend to be pretty accurate, with polling misses kind of varying by cycle. So even though they're similar in terms of partisanship, I do think Arizona is a tougher lift for Trump just because of trends, polls, and I think the geography of the state is worse for him as well. But again, he lost it by 10,000 votes in 2020. Some polls do still have him up here. And again, there are Republicans who believe they're going to win the state back, mostly and have a Republican wave in the state, powered by anger about the Biden administration's handling of the border, which could be a very important issue in a state like Arizona, where the border is, top of mind for many voters. So I wouldn't say it's a stretch to see Trump winning any of these states, and I wouldn't say it's a stretch to see Harris winning Wisconsin or Michigan. Now, generally, the assumption is that if Arizona goes red, so will Nevada. This is because this year, now not everyone thinks this, to be fair, but I believe this, and a lot of other people believe this, is that Arizona is likely to vote more Democratic than Nevada. So if Arizona goes red, let's assume that Nevada goes red. And Nevada, again, was bluer than Arizona in 2020, but it's been trending towards Republicans. And that is because, and it's kind of the opposite reason, Arizona's been trending blue because the county where 61% of the state cast their votes for Maricopa, it got 5 points bluer. But in Nevada, 70% of the state of the electorate comes from Clark County, where Las Vegas is. But this county got a 1.5 redder. So they're kind of the polar opposites. And even though Nevada starts out as being a bit bluer than Arizona, the trends in the recent results have been a lot better there for Republicans than in Arizona. So if Arizona goes red here, let's put Nevada red. But let's give Kamala Harris Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is very interesting because, again, it does tend to vote in line with the Rust Belt, but the polls this year do have being a bit redder than Michigan and Wisconsin. But historically, Pennsylvania does vote the way the rest of the Rust Belt, or the way Wisconsin and Michigan vote, and Democrats have been on a winning streak here recently. So Kamala Harris, make no mistake, she can absolutely win Pennsylvania, and she's going to make a huge play for it. So it comes down to Nebraska's 2nd district. If Kamala Harris wins this district as expected, she'd get to 270, she'd be the president, although by an incredibly narrow margin. But if Donald Trump wins this district, it's a tie. Again, I don't think that Donald Trump has a better than, say, 25% chance of winning here, which is why this is not my prediction. But all these other results, taking out Nebraska's 2nd district, maybe Harris doing well in the Rust Belt, but Trump, winning back the Sun Belt for Republicans, that could all very well happen. And then all you need is maybe flipping heads twice in a row. Like if you flip 2 quarters, right, and you've got a half chance of flipping heads both times, that's the odds that you flip heads both times are 1 in 4, unless I have a very, very grave misunderstanding of probability here. But again, that's just my analogy. So flipping heads or flipping tails 2 times in a row, that's all it would really take for Trump to win this district. And with it, from the Electoral College to a tie. That would be a historic scenario. We've never had an Electoral College tie before. We've had elections where Congress has had to decide. We've had elections where the Supreme Court's had to decide. We've had elections where we've had commissions decide. 1876, we had a commission, of judges decide how to award electoral votes. In 1824, we had, I believe, John Quincy Adams make a deal with Henry Clay to get Clay's voters in Congress to vote for Quincy Adams. In 2000, obviously, the Supreme Court stepped in and essentially, obviously, decided that election by halting the recounts and, pausing the vote count in Florida where George W. Bush had a narrow lead. So this time, we'd have Congress deciding the election, and it would be an exact tie. So how would the procedure work? Well, we would have, obviously, a vote in the House of Representatives. And in the House of Representatives, it would be state by state. And you'd have different people from each party voting for their candidate, or potentially their candidate. Again, some Republicans could vote for Harris, some Democrats could vote for Trump, obviously in theory, but let's just assume that people vote for their nominee. So in a state like California, where there's a lot more Democratic representatives than Republican representatives, safe to assume that Kamala Harris would win that state. But then again, there's other states, right? Like, say, Missouri, where there's more Republican representatives than Democratic representatives. Safe to assume that Donald Trump would win that state. And again, I've done the math. Of the 50 states, more states have more Republican representatives than Democratic representatives. Obviously, that could change in November, but we know it's very likely that Republicans are going to maintain their majorities in Wisconsin, in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Florida. And that alone would give them enough states to win the election. So Donald Trump would 99%, unless Republicans, shockingly break against him, Republican representatives in the House break against him, he would be the next president in the event of an electoral tie, which would be the craziest way for this election to end, would be a 269-269 tie, and that would likely result, again, in Donald Trump being the president through a vote in the House. So this is not the most likely outcome. It hinges upon a somewhat weird result in Nebraska's 2nd district, but again, it's not as crazy as you might think it is. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you can pull up a map and make any crazier 269 tie scenarios. But again, I just wanted to let you all know that this could happen. Not the most likely outcome, but there is a world where this is the result in November. And I think for the good of the country, it would be very difficult for our country if this was the result. So again, Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Comment down suggestions for future videos, and I'll see you all in the next video.